Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Lieutenant Colonel Nicholas Darcy. 2026 marks 125 years of dedicated service by the Australian Army and its predecessors. Today, we will remember and pay tribute to Company Quartermaster Sergeant Allan Hume Chapman and his son, Private Alfred George Chapman, a father and son who are both named on the memorial's Roll of Honour. We warmly welcome their family who are in attendance this evening. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The visitors who are able to do so, you may now be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read this story behind a father and son on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us during war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Company Quartermaster Sergeant Allan Hume Chapman and to Private Alfred George Chapman. Allan Chapman was born on the 18th of September 1871, the 7th of 8 children born to Alfred and Sarah Chapman in Adelaide, South Australia. He worked as a master plumber and was, for a time, the secretary of the Associated Master Plumbers of South Australia. He also spent 16 years serving in the Adelaide Light Horse and Lancers, a local military unit. In 1892, he met and married Emily Grogan, with whom he had 10 children. At the start of the First World War, they lived in Hyde Park in central Adelaide. One of their children, the fifth, was Alfred George Chapman, born on the 16th of November 1899 in Adelaide. As a young man, Alfred worked as a clerk, and he spent 3.5 years serving in a local senior cadets unit. At the time of the First World War, many young men were keen to sign up for what they thought would be the adventure of a lifetime. Despite only being 15 years and 11 months old, in October 1915, Alfred lied about his age and enlisted into the Australian Imperial Force. Alongside him was his then 44-year-old father, Allan, who volunteered, or was pressured, by his wife, Emily, to enlist at the same time to look after their young son. The pair went through initial training together and were eventually both transferred to the reinforcements of the 43rd Australian Infantry Battalion. In that unit, Allan, one of the older members of the group, served as the Company Quartermaster Sergeant for D Company, making him responsible for provisioning men with uniforms and other equipment. His son Alfred served in the battalion as a storeman, and it's likely that they served with each other in D Company. Father and son sailed from Australia together on the 9th of June 1916, and after a brief period of further training in England, on the 25th of November 1916, both sailed from Southampton for France and the war on the Western Front. They joined their unit, the 43rd Battalion, as it was seeing out the freezing winters in the trenches near Armentières in northern France. On the 10th of January 1917, after having been in France for only a few weeks, Allan Chapman, the father, suffered a gunshot wound in the frontline trenches. The bullet struck him in the right shoulder, broke one of his ribs, and lodged itself in his spine. His wounds were severe, and they damaged his spinal cord. He would never walk again. He was admitted to hospital in France and was then taken to King George Hospital in London, but the bullet could not be removed, and he suffered from complications related to his paraplegia, including terrible bed sores caused by his inability to move freely. On the 22nd of February 1917, he sailed from England back home to Australia. His war was over. In April 1917, he was sent to Adelaide's Keswick Military Hospital for further treatment. He continued to suffer from the effects of his wound. His bed sores became infected, and he developed toxemia, a form of blood poisoning resulting from the infection. On the 6th of September 1917, he died from the infection. Allan Chapman was 45 years old. Meanwhile, his son Alfred continued to serve with the 43rd Battalion, including at the bloody battles near Ypres in Belgium of 1917. On the 25th of September 1917, not long after his father's death, he was taken out of the trenches and eventually transferred to serve with the 1st Australian General Hospital. A brief spell of influenza in October saw him hospitalised for a week, and in late November, he travelled to the United Kingdom for a period of leave and recuperation. While Alfred was there, he reported to the King George Hospital in London, where his father had been months before, suffering from a fever, rapid pulse, and pains in the back of his neck. The exact causes of his illness were unknown, although it was suspected to be linked with an infection related to his active service in the trenches. He remained in hospital for weeks and his condition deteriorated. His fever and pains continued, and he soon lost strength in his right arm, followed by numbness. In March 1918, he was treated at the 3rd Auxiliary Hospital in Dartford and was medically discharged from active service. The cause was identified as transverse myelitis, an inflammation of the spinal cord often associated with viral infections. He sailed for Australia from England on the 16th of March 1918, and around this time his older brother Leslie, who was serving in the hospital in Australia where his father had died only months before, wrote to the authorities asking about his younger brother. They had received no official word of his illness, but having seen Alfred's name in a published casualty list, Leslie wrote that having so recently lost their husband and father, the family were distraught. Alfred, meanwhile, continued to sail home, but his condition was getting worse. When his ship stopped in Alexandria, Egypt, he was seen by his aunt Eva Helen, who was the head sister in an Australian hospital in the city. She recommended to the doctors that Alfred be brought to shore for treatment because she did not think that he would survive the journey home. But her request was not granted. On the 18th of April, 1918, 4 days after leaving Alexandria, and while his ship was still in the Red Sea, Alfred began to have severe difficulty breathing, and he died shortly after 6 a.m. Alfred Chapman was 18 years old. His father, Allan, is buried in the West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide, South Australia. Alfred has no known grave, as he was buried at sea, but his name is listed on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial in France. Both father and son are listed on the Roll of Honour to my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of Alfred's name is listed on the Villers-Bretonneux Memorial alongside a photograph of Allan, are displayed today beside the pool of reflection. These are but two of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Company Quartermaster Sergeant Allan Hume Chapman and Private Alfred George Chapman, who gave their lives for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
And the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. In the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought to himself in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.